Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Machine Shop Mastery Podcast. Today, I had a fascinating conversation with Mark Hillenburg of Collective Manufacturing Group. So Mark and his partner, Matt Ritchie, have basically built a company to buy machine shops. It is a PE-backed company, so they do have money from a PE partner. But what's unique about their story is that they are a buy and hold forever strategy. So they are buying legacy businesses that have built, strong, good businesses. Although in one case they bought one out of foreclosure, but there's still very strong fundamentals about it. But basically, the idea that these businesses, with all the baby boomers retiring, with as many businesses they're going to change hands, and seeing the pitfalls of the sort of short-term thinking strategy for many PE-backed firms, that there is a model here for buying a strong machining business, holding it forever, and building it, investing in culture and systems and processes and machines and people. And I think they're really onto something. And one of the things that really fascinates me about the way that Mark tells this story is that they are starting to get deal flow, as is called, from their customers that see other vendors of theirs, other shops that are going to head to a transition at some point. And those OEMs or primes do not want to see those companies get bought by a traditional PE firm that's going to do a buy and hold short term, try to flip it, because there's so many horror stories about those going terribly wrong and that supply chain risk to those primes or OEMs when that happens. So I think that right there is extremely telling that they really are onto something solid here. I'd love to, of course, see them. They're having great success, but that's just what's so fascinating to me about this. So this is a really fun conversation. Mark has deep roots in machine shops, starting with a business he started with his father when he was young. So he's been on the shop floor. He's made lots of chips. And Matt as well, comes with a background that really puts him in a position to understand these businesses deeply, which is probably one of the key elements between a traditional PE firm that may be coming in with some MBA executives and trying to run their businesses, without really understanding the incredible difficult nuances that come with running a machine shop. So let's get into this episode. It's really interesting and fun, and I know you'll enjoy it. Mark, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Paul. I really appreciate it. So I travel a lot. I listen to a lot of books, a lot of podcasts, but this is the first one I've ever been on. So
all right.
Anxious to share the story.
Thank you for making it this one. I know it's going to be a great one because you told me a little bit about what you're doing a couple days ago, and I am just absolutely enamored with the model and excited for you to share it with the industry because I think it's much needed. So let's start with giving a bit of your background. Sounds like you've been in the machining industry almost your whole life. So tell us about the beginning and your dad's shop and all the way up to today.
Yeah. Before I dive into that, just a little bit about me personally. Again, 40 years old, live in the Midwest here in Bloomington, Indiana, happily married for 15 years, just had my anniversary with my beautiful wife, Caroline. And we have 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls, and plus a golden doodle. So I go to work to rest, and it's part of my best sales pitch. I tell my customers I can't afford to fail, so you should do more business with us. And my partner, Matt Ritchie, similar story. He's got 4 kids. So we're busy at home. We're busy building collective manufacturing, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm extremely blessed, both personally and professionally. And it's been a fun ride up to this point, and I'm looking forward to the next couple decades in the industry as well. So
thank you for sharing that part. That's important.
Yeah, for sure. And professionally, getting out of school, early 20-somethings, going through a bit of identity crisis. I was an athlete through high school and college and trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grow up, and sitting in my home, minding my business, and had a knock on my front door, and it was my father. And he came in and he said he wanted us start a machine shop together. And he was a 30-plus year machinist himself. He ran the Department of Navy machine shop in SWC Crane in Southern Indiana. And I didn't even really know what a machine shop was, but I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and be in small business. A lot of my family was in real estate development and construction. And so I decided to give it a go. And my parents had an external garage from their house, about 700 square feet. And we actually did our first job on a Bridgeport mill, which is very fitting for a machine shop. And before we even invested in a CNC. And
Yeah.
we coupled $15,000 together and went out and bought our first CNC, which was a Herco Hawk 5M, which is essentially a tool room mill, and started doing some jobs on that, and then used the money from the first couple jobs on that to buy another machine. And we ended up, fast forward 4 or 5 years down the road, we were jam packed with four Herco mills in a garage, and I stood in the middle of them all day and spun circles and machined parts. And
Wow.
that's how I learned. And my father was still working full time at the time, so I ran the shop during the day, and then we'd spend the evenings setting up and programming together. And I think the most important thing I learned was I wasn't a very good machinist. I learned a lot, but it came natural to my father. And but I think I was learning things along the way that I didn't even realize. And I think that's I think your career in a nutshell, if you can look back, is you're always learning along the way, but not always clear exactly what you're learning. But being able to reflect on that, I think, is really important. And I think it really gave me an appreciation and an understanding for how hard it is. And I think I've been able to carry that forward as an executive leader in the businesses that I led prior and that I now own. I love being out on the shop floor with people. I love spending time with them. And I really appreciate the hard work and the effort it takes day in, day out to set up, program, and machine these parts. It's not easy. And especially in aerospace and defense, like we're doing, these are tight tolerance, difficult to work with materials, and take a special type of person to want to do that for a living. So I don't think I've ever lost sight of that. And I think the humility of telling them I could crash a machine with the best of them and wasn't a very good machinist is a story that resonates with them. And I think they get a good laugh out of it and they enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of started in my parents' garage, machined parts. We did it for 5 or 6 years. There was a downturn in the industry, defense sequestration hit, and that was making up the majority of our contracts. We were primarily an outsource option for other small defense manufacturers, such as MSP Aviation, which I know we both know, and that story comes full circle later. And my parents were nearing retirement. I had just gotten married, had my first child, and both like, man, maybe it's time to wrap this up and get into something a little more stable for both of us. The risk was getting pretty high. And so we decided to liquidate our assets and our book of business, which we had a decent amount of. And I actually sold to an Elmore Company's portfolio company called Adams and Westlake, which again comes full circle down the road to where we currently sit. And that's where I got introduced to the sales and business development side of things. So they acquired our machines and our book of business, and they wanted to grow in aerospace and defense. They were primarily in the industrial and railroad and some construction. We both learned pretty quickly it was going to be difficult for them to penetrate aerospace and defense. I brought a book of business with me. I was able to go win some new work, but as it turns out, I was having to go and machine the parts as well. Which isn't a great recipe when you're the sales guy. And as you know, it's a different game. It's a different world. It's a different type of parts. And in the meantime, I'd stayed in touch with the owner of MSP Aviation, which at the time and still is John Goody. And that was in my hometown of Bloomington, Indiana. And I decided to go do sales and business development for them, and came in at a good time. Again, they were at a bit of a trough due to the defense sequestration and some loss of defense work. But was able to have some good bookings and revenue success there in my first couple of years and to help him build that business back up. And was minding my business one day and got a call from a recruiter for an opportunity in Northern Indiana for a VP of sales for a $20 million machine shop called Kessington Aerospace, which again comes full circle to our current state that we'll get to. And accepted the position. It was a big opportunity for me. It was really a big step up from the size of machine shop. Most of my experience have been in the $5 million range size shop or smaller. And so doing a lot of business with engine OEMs and wheel and brake OEMs, and was the VP of sales there for a couple of years, and then got promoted to president and CEO as a 31-year-old. And was really thrust into a pretty difficult situation. It was an operational and financial turnaround. The company had really been struggling financially for the prior 4 to 5 years. And I was chosen as the guy to fix it and turn it around. And Was very fortunate to surround myself with great people and build a great team. And we pulled it out of the trough and got it to double-digit EBITDA in the first 12 months and then 20% plus EBITDA the following 12 months, at which point the owner decided he wanted to take it to market and look at an exit. We had a lot of interest in that business. I think we received 30 IOIs. We did 10 or 12 management presentations, and most of the offers were settling between 7 to 8 times EBITDA. And unfortunately,
Those
the
are
owner,
strong.
they were strong multiples.
That's very
We had some
strong.
very niche product lines that I think had room for growth. The facility was primed to grow. There was still a lot of unutilized square footage. Unfortunately, the owner kind of pulled the rug. I think his valuation multiples expectations were a little out of market. The market will tell you what your business is worth pretty quickly when you run a process.
Yep.
So I think
Sure.
arguing that fact doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That the market was telling us it was worth 7 to 8 times, and I think he was hoping for 10 to 12. And unfortunately, as we look to the future going into 2019, we were misaligned on where the company was headed and how we were going to get there. And I think his expectations were to get somewhere in the following year that I felt was going to take 3 to 5 years, which is somewhat typical in a PE-backed situation. It's the top line aggressiveness and the growth aspirations, sometimes get in the way of what reality is. And so we parted ways, and I went and became CEO of a company called Kin Metal Products in Southern Indiana. So it got me back closer to home in Bloomington, which at the time my wife and I were up to 4 kids, if you're keeping track. And we had our 5th that first year back in Bloomington, and took that business through COVID, which was difficult, especially they were heavy into the commercial aerospace industry. So we were really growing the business. It'd grown about 30% year over year the first year, and then a lot of headwinds with COVID. We were looking at doing a couple bolt-on acquisitions, and once COVID hit, it was pretty clear that was going to be in the distant future as we tried to stabilize the business, which we were able to do and work through it like everybody did, and secure PPP funds and all of the fun things that we learned as we went. And in the meantime, a group called NJet Aero had reached out, who was one of the potential suitors for Kessington when I was the CEO. And I liked their vision and strategy for what they were trying to do from a vertical integration on the engine OEM side. And they had a president opportunity in Terre Haute, Indiana for their facility. And NJet, again, a larger portfolio, 9 manufacturing locations across the U.S., really focused on the engine aerospace market. Was able to successfully grow the Terre Haute location from 8 million to about 25 million in 3 years. So more of an exponential growth story than a turnaround.
That's huge.
Which is what most of my experience had been. So got some good experience there, and CapEx deployment and ramping and scaling very quickly. And also became president of their Dayton, Ohio location. So I ended up being president of 2 of the 9 manufacturing locations. I was the only multi-site president. And unfortunately, NJet, I felt, had a great strategy and vision. I felt like I was misaligned with the rest of the executive team on the integration and execution of that strategy, and decided I'd really grown fatigued with kind of the short-term private equity backed, try to double it and exit. And to me, that approach drives to some misguided decisions just to get short-term results at the sacrifice of the long-term viability of the business. And so kind of took a step back in my career and reevaluated and did some coaching, consulting. I sat on a couple boards and just reflecting on what I wanted to do going forward. And that's what got us to our present day. I'd stayed in touch with my partner now, Matt Ritchie, who was with me at NJet as well. And we were both looking at acquiring small CNC machine shops, me in Indiana and him in Connecticut. And we said, hey, why don't we go do something together and build something bigger and better? And we really were aligned on the value creation opportunities. And we know there's thousands of really good shops out there that's how the idea of collective manufacturing came to be. And we found the perfect financial partners in Elmore Companies, who's located here in Bloomington, Indiana with me, that buy businesses forever for the long-term hold. And that approach for us has been the key differentiator in the first 12 months. We founded this thing almost exactly a year ago, and we acquired 3 businesses in the first 9 months. And, we're paying fair market valuations for these companies, but we're being selected because we care about the legacy and the name and the brand of the companies we're buying. And again, we want to own them for the next couple decades, like the original owners and founders have done. And we did our first acquisition in August of 2024, a company called Simpson Kovacs. We were there last week celebrating our 1-year anniversary with that team. And it was a great first acquisition for us. We 3 owners were running that business at the time, and we were able to successfully exit them as they desired in the first 3 to 6 months. And that business is having a record year this year from a revenue and an EBITDA perspective. And we hired the talent within, so we didn't put in outside president or general manager. There were a couple individuals that had been in that business for some time, and we empowered them to step up. And John and Dave and that location and that entire team there have done a phenomenal job. And it's just been fun to see what they're capable of and help them reach their full potential as leaders in that business. So
that's huge.
So, and again, they selected Collective because most of the other groups looking at them were more of your traditional PE that wanted to buy the business, but have them continue to run it and double it and sell it again in 5 years. And, I don't think that's what owners are typically looking for. I think they care about their business that they built, the legacy, and they just want to know that their employees are going to be in good hands post-acquisition. And I think more than anything with our first one, we've shown that. And the second one, was a unique opportunity in Kessington. They had actually closed their doors. Again, I left in 2019, and fast forward 5 years, unfortunately, the owner had burnt some bridges with some key customer accounts and employees, and tacked onto that COVID. They'd really struggled operationally and financially again. And we acquired that through a private foreclosure process. And November 4th, 30 days after it's closed its doors, we rehired 30 or 35 of the employees on day one, and we're able to negotiate with the employees going back into it to reopen the facilities. And we've been off to the races ever since, and on a steady trend upward from a revenue and a profit perspective. And so, again, was a little outside the box from our original thesis, but given my prior experience and knowledge with the customers and the employees there, it seemed like a great fit for us. And, personally, I couldn't stand the thought of all those employees being out of work, losing their jobs. It really was a great business, great equipment. And again, just was kind of mismanaged and poorly owned for a decade plus. And so we're proud to own that shop and excited for the future there. And then third, we closed our most recent acquisition in April 2025, Columbia Manufacturing in Columbia, Connecticut. Again, more of a complex sheet metal fabrication house with CNC machining complements and heavy infiltration with an engine OEM that we think that the original owner and founder built a great business there. Unfortunately, he passed away, and it was formerly owned by a family trust, and which had their hearts in the right place to try to do the right thing, but weren't that familiar with the space and fairly disengaged, which made it difficult for the company the last 5 to 10 years. And we think they have a very niche product scope and capabilities, and we felt like we could come in and really take it to the next level. And we're well on our way there. And so again, we set out with aspirations to buy 1 or 2 businesses every 12 months, and we bought 3 in the first 9. And here we are today, celebrating our 1-year anniversary, and we couldn't be more excited about the future and moving forward and what happens next. And we think the unique value proposition with Collective of protecting those brands, protecting those legacies, and having that long-term investment horizon. We've got the financial horsepower in the backing to do big things that maybe traditional private equity does. But I think with that long-term hold and forever hold approach, it really differentiates us. And I think the market has told us that pretty quickly. And so much so, a couple of our key customers and OEMs are, feeding us some deal flow because they've got a lot of great suppliers out there that, are founder-owned, founder-led that, unfortunately don't have the next generation to step up and take it over. And the last thing they want to see is it end up in the wrong hands. And I think we're positioning ourselves to satisfy a pretty substantial need in the market. So,
hmm Wow. Well, there's so much to reflect on there, but what a remarkable journey story. Just origin, starting out in your 20s with your dad, and then I love that vision of you being in the middle of four machines and just like trying to keep the spindles turning, like learning in the trenches, literally.
I'll be honest with what I do today. There's some days where I was like, man, being by myself in a shop between four machines with my dog at work with me sounds pretty nice right now. So the headaches I had then versus the headaches I have now are they're different levels of
different and
headaches.
smaller.
But yeah.
Wow.
But, it was a great start.
Yeah, for sure. And I can relate to what you're talking about. Owners want their employees to be taken care of, right? When we sold ProCNC in 2014, we did not take the highest bidder, right?
Yeah.
We went through a process and we chose the company that had a solid offer, but was far more invested in the employees and the location and the customers, and just double down and investing in what we'd already built. And that was way more important to us than, extra dollars from the highest bidder. So I think it's good for both buyers and sellers to just reflect on that and realize that at the end of the day, that's probably going to win the day, and have a successful outcome.
Yeah, it's definitely a key part of our approach. And again, it's not just words for us. We're sincere about it. And it's the main driver for why we put Collective together. I've seen a lot of good shops go by the wayside that were great for several decades, and it doesn't take long to, I think I shared with you during our initial call, a shop near and close to home to me here in Bloomington, Indiana. I'd known the owners for decades and always wanted to buy it, and the time just never worked out. And they decided to exit, and probably chose the wrong firm for the wrong reasons, and it was closed 12 months later, which is just hard to imagine for the 12 to 15 employees that they had that worked there for that long and that good of a business that had such a stable track record of success, and was really a diamond in the rough for a lot of reasons. And it's too much hard work and blood, sweat, and tears was put into that place to just see it closed up 12 months later. So
that's tragic.
Yeah.
With the first couple of shops that you acquired, I do want to come back to your customers giving you deal flow, which is fascinating. But for the first ones, how did you find them? What was the process like?
Yeah, so the beginning was the hardest part, right? We had this vision for Collective. Hey, let's go buy shops. Well, that's easier said than done. And again, there's a lot of them out there, but how are you going to find them? How are you going to get your story out there? So I personally was looking at one. My partner, Matt Ritchie, was looking at one in Connecticut. So we started with those. And again, the timing wasn't right, didn't work out. We're still in touch with those facilities. And then oddly enough, I'm subscribed to a couple M&A emails, like kind of broad based. And one came across my email inbox one day for a shop out in Connecticut. And it's like, hey, this seems to check a lot of our boxes. And we reached out, and they had been going through the process on and off for about 2 to 3 years and unable to find the right buyer for one reason. They had accepted LOIs a couple times and the buyers backed out, a variety of reasons. And so we engaged with them, and so it was kind of fate, meant to be, like it kind of, I think we were right place, right time for them and for us. And again, that one was, I think, scared some people off due to a little bit of the size. Again, it's a smaller shop, $4 million in revenue, but like clockwork, very stable margins, long track record of performance financially. Had some deferred CapEx and maintenance, so we knew we were going to have to make some investments coming in to get it up from a technology stack perspective. But they had a long, stable track record with their top 3 customers and a niche product offering, and what I would consider sticky business that, as long as you continue to deliver quality parts on time, the customers aren't going to leave you, and for an attractive value. And I think Matt and I both being in manufacturing, I think we can figure out the other side of the transaction of how we're going to help those 3 owners retire, which they were call it 70 years old each, and they'd put in their time, 30 years. And, it wasn't just about maximizing the value on the exit for them. It's like they had to find a buyer that could allow them to retire in
Sure.
3 to 6 months. They wanted to go play golf. They'd given their
Yeah.
life's work to it. And I don't think a lot of groups can do that. And,
Mm-hmm.
geographically, it worked for us. Again, Matt's out in Connecticut. So, it was an hour from his home. And, we're shop guys. I mean, we don't have an ivory tower or a headquarters office that we sit in, where I'm sitting in one of my shops 99% of the time. And same for him. Two of the shops are in Connecticut, and he's at one of those two every day. And we intend to keep it that way, especially here in the beginning. And now as we grow and scale, and we'll certainly look outside of the Midwest and the Northeast should the opportunity present itself. But I think we were able to offer them a fair offer from a dollar perspective, but more importantly, the off ramp and succession plan they were looking for that gave them confidence that their business was going to be around for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
Again, they were there with us last week celebrating, and we went out and played golf with them. That was my only round of golf this year. So my golf game would tell you that I'm not very good, and I don't have time to play. So, but going out and celebrating with those three owners and high fiving, and nobody's happier than they are at this point. That
Yeah.
first 12 months, anyways, has gone better than we could have hoped, and we're trying to build on that. We've put a couple new pieces of equipment in there. We've introduced some light touch automation and some cobots on second shift, so we're trying to maximize some of the capacity we have available there, which was critical for us to be able to deliver to our customers' needs this year. And it's a good story for them. It's a good story for the employees, and it's a great story to share with our customers. So,
yeah, so many things to dig into. Let's talk about the employees. Well, maybe before we get to that, because it's probably all a part of it, but this off ramp for the current owners, right? Is some of the maybe, for example, the one that that tried for 2 or 3 years to sell and couldn't get a deal to come together? Was it a matter of the new buyers not really providing a great exit ramp because maybe I don't know if they were PE firms or companies that didn't have shop expertise and they needed them to stay longer than they wanted to just because there was no other easy replacement? And tying that back into the shop that you knew that got bought and was closed a year later, like, talk about the secret sauce that you had and the pitfalls of these other types of buyers that come in and just don't have the experience or think they know more than they do and just implode the thing, and maybe contrast the two.
Yeah. I think the majority is those owners look to exit that business. They had a lot of interest. They had a broker running a process. So as you would imagine, there's a lot of PE firms out there either in manufacturing or looking to get into it. I think the majority of their offers were attractive from a financial perspective and in market. I think the challenge was the majority of the offers were, hey, we'll buy the business, allow you to take your majority stake off the table. We're going to ask you guys to hold on to some of that. And we'd love to give you the financial backing you need to go double this business in the next 3 to 5 years, but we still want you to run it. And then, hey, we'll sell it again and you'll double your money. And, again, for them, that they wanted to retire. Owning the shop for 20, 30 years, they had rough times, but for the most part, they had built some wealth for themselves. And they wanted a fair exit and to secure their retirement. But it was less about maximizing the total dollar figure. They were ready to be done working. They were fatigued, they were tired, and they had realized, they were holding the shop back at that point of what it could be. And a couple of the younger generation in the workforce in that facility that wanted to go invest in some new technology, wanted to try new things. And, they weren't empowering that or embracing it. They didn't want to change anything at this point. They had kind of, settled in. And again, everything kind of was very stable and ran like clockwork and was, the business was generating cash, and, their risk tolerance was extremely low at that point. Why would they want to go invest a bunch to new equipment and take a big swing and take on a big risk? And it's hard to work for yourself for 30 years and then think about the idea of going and working for somebody else, especially when kind of the reputation and track record about some of they've seen, former colleagues and shop owners sell to the wrong person and how that ends up. And so they were
Yeah.
very selective in that. And, they were patient and frustrated through the process. Again, they went to market hoping to sell it much sooner than 2 to 3 years. But kudos to them. I think they waited out for the right time. And I think if you ask them, they tell you they're thrilled to death and excited they were patient with that selection process. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. You've done it for 30 years. Maximizing every dollar with this whole second bite of the apple thing just isn't palatable, right? And when it's just a promise and you see so many horror stories of it actually not working out that way, and you're not actually in control anymore, you're just working for someone else that actually holds the purse strings and makes the decisions, and you're supposed to execute. It's a tough situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to kind of answer the second part of your question, I think, myself and my partner, Matt Ritchie, when you look at our background and experience, we've grown up in manufacturing. That's all we've done our entire career. So Matt's very heavy operations experience and focused and, has led organizations, ranging from 5 million to 200 million, multi-site operations. We have a track record and experience of being out on the shop floor. We're not guys staring at spreadsheets trying to thinking we have all the answers. We go out and we identify the answers and the solutions and collaborate with the folks that are making it happen every day. And again, another unique part of the value proposition that I think we offer at Collective in comparison. It's not just about the money and the financial valuation. It's what we can do on the other side of the transaction for the legacy and the brand of the business. And again, that's how we came up with the slogan, rooted in legacy, powered by progress. Do we want to make some changes? Sure, but we also don't want to break what's working and what's worked for decades in these facilities. We want to build on that and invest in the companies with new equipment, new technologies, whether that's ERP, what have you, to help the shop run smoother and better, and give it the resources it needs to maximize its potential. So.
Let's talk about those sort of hidden gem employees that have worked in the business, but maybe not in a leadership role or not enough of a leadership role. How do you identify those? How do you scaffold them and support them to, maximize their potential and help the business do the same?
Yeah. Again, I think it starts with, I'm a relationship guy. And the thing I love the most is the relationships with the employees and also the customers and our suppliers. I think that's a bit of a lost art. I think most shops or shop owners are great at making things, but sometimes undervalue the importance of those relationships. And so that's something I personally pride myself on, and Matt does as well. And so the first thing we try to do as new owners of a business is engage and spend a lot of time on the shop floor, just talking to the people, asking them, what do you see? What are the challenges you deal with every day? And what would help make life easier? And we try to lend an ear and listen and assess. We don't come in the first 30, 60, 90 days and be a bull in a china shop. You can learn a lot in due diligence, but you can't really learn that much until you own the business and you step in and you engage with the workforce and identify who's passionate about the mission and who cares and wants to see the place be successful. I think a lot of that comes out just in having conversations with people. And you identify who those individuals are and the influencers in the business. We also utilize, a process called traction or EOS. It's our operating system for the business. So it builds accountability into our daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual rhythms to where, again, we're building those 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plans, but backing it up to 90 days to talk about, okay, what do we have to do this quarter to make progress towards those long-term plans and visions? And I think a lot of businesses, not just machine shops, are aware of their issues or where they want to go, but they don't break it down or spend any time talking about what they have to get done in shorter increments to actually accomplish those things or remove issues from the list. And, in business, it's a never-ending journey. It's not linear. And, there's always issues going to be on the issues list. But as you grow or you scale or industry dynamics shift, or market dynamics, things change, new issues arise, but you have to have a team that collaborates and discusses those openly and honestly and embraces the challenge. Great teams are built through challenging times, and that was the one thing I kind of have a love-hate with the turnarounds that I've been in. In the moment, they're really difficult, but when you get through it and you make it through those challenging times with a team, it's really special. The bonds that are built, and coming through the other side of that with a group of people is really empowering. And our people take pride in their facilities, their work, and our equipment, and we want that. We want them to be proud to wear our shirts, and that's why we're always furnishing as much swag as we can. We want them to, brag to their local buddies that work at other facilities about how great it is to work where they're at. And we very quickly try to become the employer of choice by doing that, empowering the people and listening to them. And we try to keep overhead extremely low, and we really try to empower the shop floor to drive a lot of the day-to-day decision making. And the bottom line, they're in the middle of it, and they have more of the answers than we do, looking at a spreadsheet. So, yeah.
And do you then, after you really get to know these folks and get their input, you sort of come to them and say, hey, I think there's bigger potential for you. Would you be willing to take on this new role? Or maybe walk us through some of those conversations.
Yeah. So, just starting with our first acquisition, because, a couple of these are so new, I think that's the biggest success story yet. Simpson Kovacs in Wallingford, Connecticut. Again, 3 owners own that business, ran it for 30 years. And, I think even they told us coming in, if, Matt Ritchie, my partner, was there full time. Starting out, it's an hour from his home. So we knew the plan was for him to be on site initially and very hands-on, which he was for the first 6 months, and, identify what the business truly would need from a support function. And, once he was able to get in there and have those conversations and work with some of the existing workforce, there were a couple individuals that stood out, that the prior owners recognized that going into it, but I think even themselves didn't feel like they would be capable of running the shop themselves. And we started to sit down with those individuals and have longer term conversations about what they wanted in their career and what they were hopeful for in the next 5 to 10 years, where they'd like to see Simpson. And oddly enough, it seemed to be pretty strongly aligned with what our vision was for Simpson at the collective level. And like, hey, let's go do this together then. This seems to be your natural skill set, so let's have you own and be responsible for this portion of the business. And, Dave, you're good at this and the engineering and ops side. And so let's kind of split it in half and have you guys work together and really own that. And again, sometimes you just overcomplicate things, and, you think you need more, overhead or leadership in a facility than you really do, especially in a small shop like that. And I think that's a common mistake that traditional private equity tends to make. And then it makes it difficult to make money. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians. And, again, we just found we had strong alignment on the vision for what we wanted to see Simpson and Kovacs go be. And through those conversations, we empowered them. We visited their compensation package, and we incented them to go help us grow that business. And, again, started investing in some new technology and capacity. And those were things they were wanting to see for the last 5 to 10 years. But, they loved the former owners. But again, at the stage of their career they were at, they weren't able and willing to go do that. So, again, the view at Collective, and part of how we came up with this logo, 4-pronged, is we want to have a stakeholder approach. And that's everything from the original founders and owners of the businesses. The employees are just as excited about Collective coming in as anybody, because of how we're going to empower them and invest in these businesses for the long term. That's the biggest question coming in, is what's going to change? What's going to happen to my job? How does that impact me personally? We try to get in front of that right away and show them, hey, we're in this for the long run. We're gonna get to know each other really well and work together for a long time. And so that's reassuring to them. And number 3, the third stakeholders, the customers. And then number 4 is the strategic partners and suppliers. So that's why we kind of have 4 prongs of our logo. And if you notice, it also kind of looks like a 4-flute end mill from the bottom, and it signifies motion. So it has a lot of meanings to it. We put a lot of time and effort and thought into that. And That's where the powered by progress comes in. We wanted it to show motion, but we wanted the four pillars to represent what we view as the stakeholders of the business. And that's how we came up with the name Collective. We're all in this together, and to see the business be successful, those stakeholders all have to have an active role and participation in it. And so we're really trying to capitalize on that.
So awesome. So let's talk about the clients providing deal flow. And I also want to have you share a little bit about the shop that had closed its doors.
Yeah.
And you kind of brought it out and I think worked with the customers prior to, sealing that deal and having their buy-in. Because I think you're onto something here with some of what you've been talking about, is that the supply chain is in I want to say a risky spot, but like there's huge demand on the horizon. There's not enough companies to serve it. So each company is just really critical, in a macro sense and in a micro sense with each OEM or tier one or whatever and supplier. And so there's quite a bit of bargaining power and sort of in saying, hey, we're a strong business. We've been a partner for years. We want to continue with you. We know you need a supplier like us to continue, because the last thing they want to do is go resource dozens or hundreds of part numbers, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And just the risk with that. So maybe just talk a little bit about all of that.
Yeah. Kessington is a huge part of my career and my story. It really launched and propelled my career when I went there in 2014. It was there for 5 years. It was my first president CEO opportunity. I learned a ton, both good and bad, what works, what doesn't work. And, it was my first turnaround and, pulled it out of the trough, went through my first M&A exit process. And so learned a ton through that as well. And, so I poured my heart and soul into that business. I gave that group of people everything I had. I mean, I literally ran that business like it was my own. And, it was unfortunate when the owner decided not to sell and decided to part ways with me as a leader. And I felt like it was ripped away from me unfairly and undeservedly. Again, the business had been unprofitable for 5 years prior. We took it to double-digit EBITDA for 24 months and had a great valuation and offer on the table. And again, I wasn't going to make a lot of money off the deal, but I was excited to see the business continue to grow and prosper. So, when I exited that business, it kind of, a piece of my heart stayed with it. And again, I never let it go. It always felt like the one that got away that still had a lot of untapped potential to it. And so I had great relationships with the folks that were still there and, still knew most of the employees, and they would stay in touch from time to time. And I knew they were steadily kind of, headed the wrong direction. And, things started to really ramp up and people were reaching out more frequently late in 2024 and, got wind that the owner had just folded it up, closed the doors. And at that point, we were a couple months post-close of Simpson Kovacs, and I started calling everybody and anybody I knew. So all the employees, all the customers, I figured out who owned the debt, who the bank was, and through our banking and dealer networks, we were able to get in touch with a contact there. And we started the acquisition process, which was pretty unique, even given Elmore Company's experience. I don't think they'd ever bought a company out of an Article 9 UCC private foreclosure process, but I don't think anybody could have done it as fast as us. And again, given my relationships with prior with the employees and the customers, I felt like we were able to do 90 days of due diligence in a week. And there were other groups looking at it, considering an acquisition, but I always felt like we were in first place and they were in 10th, given what we knew and what needed to happen. But we were always interested in buying the business as a going concern. Again, I had that business sold in 2018 for a 7 to 8 times multiple. And, we probably overpaid for it, given what some people would look at from an orderly liquidation value or something like that if you were to liquidate the assets. But again, we bought this place because, number one, I couldn't stand the thought of 70 really good people being out of work at no fault of their own. They had put their heart and soul into that business, and they didn't deserve for that business to close. And but number two, we believed that they had a niche product line to several OEMs that we knew those customers really couldn't do without, and they were looking at acquiring the business. They couldn't afford to see that business close. So we had those conversations very early on that, how could we partner together to reopen this business and us have some reassurance and confidence going in that, obviously they have to be developing risk mitigation and plan B with a business closing.
Of course.
And a lot of the product is dual sourced already. But hey, if we make this investment, will you guys give us some time and partner with us to prove ourselves that Kessington can be a viable supplier to you again and a pivotal part of your supply chain. And to your point, it's a constrained environment in the aerospace and defense supply chain. There's already not enough capacity. The last thing some of these OEMs can afford to see is a supplier with hundreds, if not thousands of part numbers go under. The switching cost and changing those, and there's nowhere to put them because, again, there's not enough capacity as it exists already. So yeah, from a negotiating perspective, it was a unique position to be in. But again, we try to be very collaborative with our customers, and we do like the long-term relationships and the stickiness of the product. The bottom line, airplanes fly for a really long time. So in some of our facilities, we make parts that go on a B-52 bomber. It's crazy. And everybody, parts for the CFM56, it's the best selling engine of all time, and everybody, well, it's being replaced by LEAP, but yeah, the CFM56 is still going to fly forever. So there's just a lot of attractiveness to this industry that I really like. And, part of that's because I'm biased and I know it, and it's where I've spent the majority of my career. But, there's decades of backlog ahead of us, and planes are going to fly for a long time. New planes are going to be built. And we think it's a very attractive market to be in from a value creation perspective, again, for all stakeholders. And so, and, I think as our ability to get into Kessington, reopen the operation, hire all the employees back. We didn't receive a single no to an employee that we offered a job to, which I think is indicative of collective coming in. And my prior track record there was a part of that, and having a relationship with those employees. A couple months into Kessington, that particular customer, their largest customer, had 2 or 3 others that not in somewhat of a similar situation, or a great business with an owner and a founder that didn't have much of a succession plan. And they asked if we wanted to run the same play again. And we weren't quite ready at that time. But, the customers have been really impressed with our ability to move quickly and to execute at a really high level. Kessington, when we stepped in, had $2 million in delinquent orders, and we burned that down to $1 million within a couple months. And again, hired all the employees back, renegotiated new supply agreements with our strategic raw material and outside suppliers. It was a heavy lift. There was a lot of work to be done, but I think we know how to go do those heavy lifts and how to execute. And I think we have a reputation and track record for being able to go do that successfully, and the customers see that value. And so therefore I think they'd rather see us get our hands on a business than a lot of the other groups out there at this point. So, and they know we have the financial backing, the horsepower to go do it, and the ability on the other side of the transaction to execute, which is extremely powerful. So
yeah. So let's put a hypothetical together here. A shop owner that is not looking to retire in the next couple of years. Maybe they've owned their business for a while, or maybe they bought it a few years ago, but they like this playbook. Maybe they still need some additional financial backing as well. But approaching their customers and saying, "Hey, we really want to double down on your business. Do you know of other suppliers you work with that maybe don't have a succession plan, or let us sort of partner with you to build out your supply chain to be super robust and de-risk for you and help all of us in how would you, I know I just sort of outlined a bunch of different parts of that, but I'm sure there's a lot of details, and strategies that could be employed that someone listening might be like, wow, that is actually a great plan. I want to go try to replicate that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a viable play for someone to deploy. I think first and foremost, if you already own a shop, you need to make sure your house is in order first before you go doing bolt-on acquisitions. And so, one thing is we really don't get enamored with top line revenue growth. We're actually fans of cutting off the tails of our product lines that we manufacture or the list of customers. Like I said, part of having an acquisitive growth strategy, we also try to grow organically. And, for example, we need to grow about 30 or 40% next year just in organic across our 3 sites, which is substantial. And we plan to do a couple bolt-ons, but we would rather at the site level in each business unit, we try to go really deep with our customers on the product lines we consider ourselves industry leading on. And so as opposed to, it's very common for a shop owner to open a blueprint and say, yeah, we can make that. And over a decade or two, you end up kind of being everything for everybody. And you kind of have an identity crisis, and you have a long list of customers. And we'd rather have a select few customers that we do a lot of parts for in similar part families and similar product groups, and get really good at tooling our equipment up and investing in technologies that's going to make us impossible to compete with on those part families and product groups. So I would start with, I think that's a big part of our strategy as well. That's maybe not completely different, but I think something to get right as you look at doing bolt-on acquisitions. I think it'd be really difficult to scale without that approach. And that's a big part of our ability to scale is, 1 or 2 of these businesses, as we've acquired them in the first 90 days, we've had to have some uncomfortable conversations with certain customers on that list that, hey, this is not a good fit for our business. We're not good at these. And that's not just meaning we don't make money at them. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not a good capability or core competency for us. And the opportunity is far greater on a shorter list of customers on a product line that we're already good at, and we can grow and utilize our assets to grow there. And so that's a big part. We're Pareto or 80-20 guys or whatever you want to call it. And that's how we analyze our product groups and our part portfolios. And but yeah, I think a good shop owner out there that has their house in order and able to have those conversations with their current customers. I think, customers want you to be strategic, not transactional. Unfortunately, a lot of these relationships, they send you an RFQ, you submit a price. And I think if you're doing that, that's not a great spot to be in. I think getting around the table and talking strategically about the product you're making for them currently and how you can refine that together to provide more value to them, and usually some cost savings from that. Again, in a high mix, low volume environment, that's one of the ways you kind of create some volume for yourself is if you make a part family, as opposed to making 5 part numbers in that part family, if you can make 100 of them, you kind of create volume with minimal setup time on your equipment. You can go to more cellularized manufacturing, maybe introduce some light touch automation. Those are deep conversations you need to be having with your customers on a frequent basis. And again, it often doesn't happen quickly. Again, these are long sales cycle businesses that, we have 3, 5, 8-year-old TAs in some of these businesses, so they don't come up for competition very often. But the more you can build robustness around your product families and product groups, it's also going to make it really difficult for those customers to ever move that. The switching costs would be extremely high, and this is very sticky product. And I think a lot of the aerospace and defense OEMs, at least the ones we're doing, having relationships and conversations with, are woke up to the fact they've done some damage to their suppliers with payment terms and how they've treated them. And, they want to go deep on product groups and part families. And, it's not just about the unit cost. It's safety, quality, delivery, and then cost. But you can't have one without the other in that sequence. And if you've got safety and quality and delivery, they're not going to move it for a couple nickels or even a couple dollars, in my experience. And we service our customers at an exceptionally high level, and that's one thing we pride ourselves on. We tell our teams we're not a products business, we're a service business, and we're on the phone. And we respond to emails right away. We respond to phone calls right away. I was texting with an engine OEM executive late last night who, oddly enough, had a facility that they think we should look at, and they don't want to see it end up in the wrong hands. And, it's 8:30 p.m. and, I just finished up dinner with my wife and kids, but, we're real people having real relationships with these customers. And I think all shop owners need to be doing that if they want to have those seats at the table for those strategic conversations and not just transacting with their customers, truly going intimate and deep in those conversations and relationships about how you can help each other. and create value for both not just your organization, but more importantly theirs, and finding ways to do that.
Yeah, that's there's so much wisdom there. It's a funny time right now. I feel like there's shops that are, growing 30-40% a year and setting records, and there's shops that are like, I don't have any work right now. And I kind of feel like the ones that don't, they're probably more transactional type shops. They receive a PO, they deliver it. They're not sitting down and having these deep conversations. How can I be a better supplier? How can I reduce risk in your supply chain? What can we do to partner? It's tricky, right?
It's a tough thing to solve. And if you think about it, most shop owners and founders, right? They grew up on the shop floor. They know how to make stuff and make stuff really well and make parts. But, maybe the relationship, stuff doesn't come natural to them, or they just want to look at a print and make a part. But, if they want to have long-term success in their business, I think they've got to either figure out how to cross that bridge themselves, or certainly have someone in their organization that can harvest those relationships. It's a tough industry. Again, I think Mike Payne posted the red tape picture and kind of how we got this thing started. It's a tough industry to penetrate from the outside looking in. And the parts they send you to RFQ when you're new coming in are probably the parts nobody wants, are going to be extremely difficult to do or make money on for one reason or another. And again, when you're transactional, it really puts the long-term viability of the business at risk, in my opinion. And again, somebody has to harvest. It's less of a hunting sales industry, and it's more of a harvesting sales relationship. And I think that's where I've had success at most of the facilities I've been involved with, and what I enjoy. Again, I enjoy the relationships.
So I don't know if you're at, and we'll edit this out if you're not at liberty to say, but with your financial partner, is it just lines of credit, loans? Are they an equity partner in the business with you?
Yeah, so myself and Matt are the single largest individual equity holders of Collective. So they're deeply experienced in due diligence and M&A, and that's how we were able to buy Kessington in 30 days after they closed their doors. Like, if I was on my own, I would have wanted to buy Kessington, but I would have never been able to go execute that with our banks and lenders, the paperwork, the attorneys. I have no idea. Never heard of an Article 9 UCC filing. So they give us, they have the banking relationships as well. So being able to use their banking network to set us up with a substantial line of credit, and the working capital and the capital to go deploy as we find new acquisitions. And then Matt and I are kind of the boots on the ground and the operating partners that go execute and make it happen on the other side of the transaction. But they've been monumental in our ability. I mean, we bought 3 businesses in 9 months, which was never the aspiration to begin with. But the opportunities presented themselves, and were small and nimble, but again, have the financial horsepower to go execute, and the relationships and the knowledge to go execute on the front end and the other side of the transaction. I think having both of those is really important, and that's where Elmore comes in. And again, their long track record and experience, and being buy and hold forever investors, and they're here in Bloomington, Indiana with me, and it's kind of a match made in heaven for what we're going and building at Collective. It's kind of the best of both worlds. So.
Yeah. I can just imagine some of the conversations when you've just closed 1 or 2 deals, and you see this thing come across you're like, oh my God, the timing couldn't be worse and better. Like, are we nuts to do this? But let's go for it. Like, let's send
I would say by the end of the third, we were pretty fatigued, and we all said, okay, time out. No more acquisitions for a while. But, again, last night I have a new one on my desk that an executive at an OEM reached out and said, hey, we don't want to see this place end up in the wrong hands. I know the business as well. They were a large customer of mine, and it's in our region. And it's like, so we have to take a look at it. And again, we're always willing to have conversations. And again, sometimes these transactions don't happen right away. It takes a few years. And again, we're a viable player at the table. And we think what we offer at Collective for the long term and protecting the legacy of the business is really important.
customers, supply chain, risk, all those things. One thing I just kind of want to wrap up on here, which is something I hope you have a thought on. I'm wondering if there's, we hearing about all these PE firms that are getting into manufacturing because they see the long-term potential. And we hear about all the stories that haven't worked out very well. I'm wondering if like a pendulum is swinging and like PE firms are like digging their own grave in some regards. And this strategy of buy forever or a more conservative approach rather than the, double, triple it in 5 years and sell it again, short-term gains is, this pendulum swinging to the point where they're like the customers of these businesses that are up for sale will not sign up for a PE firm buying that company because the risk is too high. Like maybe speak on your thoughts on that whole dynamic.
Yeah, I have to be a little careful, and I don't want to say, too much. And again, there are some good PE firms out there, and not all the ones I've worked for were bad.
Sure, of
but
course,
I
absolutely.
just, part of the problem is, again, these are long sales cycle businesses that sometimes you can't always control a 3 to 5 year timeline and, every month, every quarter. Sometimes you have to make a decision today that maybe has a negative impact on the month or the quarter, but is the right thing to do for 1 year, 3 years from now. Mm-hmm. And the challenge is when you're not wired to think that way and what's driving your decisions is short-term, board meetings and things like that and results and being able to show investors returns in these types of businesses, it often creates a lot of challenges. And so, that's what I've seen time and time throughout my career, regardless, just with that type of short-term investment horizon that, you kind of get at a conflict of interest for what's best for the business versus what's best in the short term for a shareholder presentation perspective. Mm-hmm. And, it's not a great spot to be in when you're president, CEO of the business. And, I'm always siding with the people and have been able to generate great financial returns for my shareholders as well. But again, never at the detriment of the sacrifice of the people or the culture or the long-term viability of the business. I don't have the stomach for it. And I got sick and tired of having the conversations, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. And I think that approach and reputation is out, and it's definitely acknowledged and being talked about with our current customers and things that, again, every time we speak, again, with executives, whether it's at an engine OEM or a fuel control OEM, but in the space, I think they're worried about the next couple decades and where some of these key suppliers end up. Because the reality is not everybody has a second or third generation in the wings or at the helm to take it over, but they are a critical supplier. And they can't be successful without them. And so we're having a lot of those conversations right now. It's something that we thought would happen coming into Collective, but for it to happen so quickly this early, 1 year into the journey, is really exciting. And I think shows that our vision was, and our thesis was aligned and correct with filling a pretty big need within the supply chain.
Yeah.
And we're more excited now than we were on day one. And we think that excitement's going to continue to grow as we continue to execute and have those conversations.
Oh, so good. Well, thank you for sharing all this. Thank you for being on the show. And thank you for doing what you're actually doing, right? Saving these businesses and investing in these jobs and these people. It's so needed. Just grateful for what you're doing.
Well, and we saved Kessington, but the other two, we're protecting them. We want to be good stewards of the business, and a big part of our goal is to preserve them and preserve the legacy and then propel them. And we're passionate about American manufacturing, and we think that's needed to strengthen our communities and our country. And we're excited to play our part in that.
Awesome. Well, again, glad we got connected. Thank you for sharing. This has been a fantastic episode. If people want to learn more about you, about the business, about Collective, where would you direct them?
Yeah, reach out to me directly on LinkedIn would be your best bet. And I'd love to connect with folks on there, and hence how this came to be in the podcast today. And I love what I'm seeing just across the board in manufacturing and the network that's growing and building and the excitement and energy levels around manufacturing. And again, we're excited to play our small role in that and looking forward to connecting with others on that platform.
Awesome, Mark. Well, thank you again. This has been a delightful last hour. And there's a lot of wisdom that's shared here that hopefully will help lots of people with their planning and sort of how they think they might want to do things in the future. So you're on to something good here.
I hope so. And I appreciate it, Paul. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right. Hope to see you around at an event soon.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
All right.